Welcome to the Community Voice. I'm Fara Sax. Forced labor and human trafficking is a huge billion-dollar global industry with $32 billion of that right here in the U.S. alone. Shockingly, 40% of sex trafficking victims are recruited online. My guest is the founder of the Community Police Relations Foundation, Eskanazy, whose mission is to advocate against trafficking to build stronger, safer communities. Al, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having us.
I just picked one little tidbit of what you do at CPR Foundation. There is so much going on. Tell me about your background, how this started for you, and its mission.
Well, I'll try to make it as short as I can.
Well, we have 30 minutes.
Okay. So I'm basically, I was born and raised in a place called the Bronx. You might have heard of it.
Yeah, right next to Queens, right?
The streets of the Bronx. Queens is where we go on vacation.
Not anymore.
Not anymore, perhaps. No, in all seriousness, I'm a kid from the streets who made it big, made it good. And as a businessman, I sold my business in 2016. And I thought I was coming down to retire into our beautiful Miami Beach home that we had here, as well as Long Island, New York. It seemed that in 2017, the world started going upside down. What was good was bad, and in the sense that defund police, we don't want police, and I don't know who you call at 3 in the morning if there's an incident. Maybe you call a plumber, or I'm not sure. But the point of it is defund police, and teachers should be raising your children, not parents. And, that just didn't sit right with me. And then religion was being attacked. And I'm not a particularly religious individual, although I find myself to be very spiritual. So this started getting me very, very angry. And my wife was tired of me yelling at the TV, and she threw an old adage that I always say, if there's something that's disturbing you, either do something about it, or quite frankly, shut up because no one's interested in hearing you. Which reminds me of in 1997, that was a circumstance that I was confronted with. I met a little boy of 5 years old, very strong resemblance to my son when he was 5. And he was autistic, and he was being put into a home. And it just didn't seem right with me. So over the period of 2 years, I lobbied the state education department in New York State for the ability to start a school. And by 1998 year end, we had a school built. It was called Ascent School for Individuals with Autism. That's ASC in Deer Park, Long Island. And we are in our 28th year, and I'm still chairman, school president on that over there. Magnificent program, because it's a one-to-one program, one teacher, one child each and every day, as opposed to 6 children with one teacher. And it's not totally funded by the state. It's a free school, no tuition, so we have to fundraise for that. But we're in our 28th year, and we've matriculated over 44% of our children back to district. So that gave me the segue into starting this foundation, Community Police Relations Foundation, known as CPR Foundation. Has a mission statement very, very dissimilar to what was going on in 2017 and 18. Our mission was to bring people in distressed neighborhoods together with each other, together with law enforcement. And when I say together, I'm saying that typically the law enforcement is only seen in many of these communities in 2 ways. One, there's a car driving down the street with a uniform in it. And the other is when there's a circumstance that revolves around criminal activity or vehicular activity. And that was just wrong, because I know the law enforcement psychology of these officers, and it's very much in keeping with the same psychology of people in distressed neighborhoods. When I was growing up, law enforcement was quite different than it is today. law enforcement officers of today are typically from the neighborhoods that we're speaking about. And I could take anybody for a ride along to see, or different police departments to validate what I'm saying. So whether we're in South Florida, Miami-Dade County, or in New York City, or in Chicago, or LA, I'm here to tell you that our law enforcement officers today have a different heart, a different soul, and mostly from the streets that they're protecting.
So the CPR Foundation, let's talk about who you touch. You're talking about disadvantaged neighborhoods. Yeah. We touched on a little bit about human trafficking. I mean, there's so many things that you do. We will go into detail on each of them, but just give me an overview of who you help along the way.
Well, we're here, as I said, to help distressed neighborhoods, underprivileged neighborhoods. And certainly we do the food drives. We'll do events that bring bicycles into neighborhoods or toys into neighborhoods. But our greatest challenge was getting people to know each other as people, not as a cop, or not as somebody in the streets that's suspect. People. So that's what we endeavor to do. But in doing so, in 2018 and 2019, it became very, very evident that our law enforcement officers were taxed beyond anyone's comprehension. And by that I mean, if every day you open up the newspapers or every day you open up television and all you hear about is bad policing, defund police, get rid of these police, it has a toll not only on our communities that suffer because they're defunding or lowering the budgets, and you can see by the rise in crime what that has done, but the psyche of the individual officers. These officers, male and female, I don't want to say these guys, if I may combine them, not to offend anyone, but for simplicity of conversation. These officers get up every single day or middle of the night to put on a uniform, to go out to serve and protect. That's not just a mantra. That is exactly what's happening. Imagine 2:30 a.m. in the morning, a true example. 2:30 a.m. in the morning, an officer's riding in a squad car and gets a call. And the call is very simply a domestic violence call. Officer doesn't say, what's the race, creed, color, sexual orientation. They just ask for one question. What's the address? I'm on my way. They get to a scene, and there's an altercation with a subject who's resisting, I don't want to say resisting arrest, just resisting anything. The officer subdues the subject, but right there on the floor is the officer is a child and a woman. We don't know anything about the circumstance yet. Is that a spouse? Is that person's child? What's the circumstances? We don't get to make those determinations until the scene is safe. But that officer arrived prior to any other backup, and he now has to tend to those individuals on the floor. What must that be like for a mother or father as an officer to see a distressed child or spouse? So basically what happens is now that officer gets the backup coming in and now has to compose themselves of the trauma that it is a trauma. No question about it. It is a trauma to that officer. It's not a casual circumstance. But now what if you're an officer in certain neighborhoods, and this happens numbers of times? It's not a one-off experience. It happens numbers of times in the course of a week or a month or career.
Yes. So how does the foundation help these officers, these first responders, so that they have the mindset, so they're in a good place, so their mental health is being taken care of?
Well, every department today is so much better than they were just 10 years ago or even 5 years ago with mental health. The chiefs of the department and the other officers in the department, they now have psychological services. Certainly the Sheriff's Department, Miami-Dade Sheriff's Department, has excellent psych services. Excellent. But there's still department psych services. And, one thing about law enforcement and the military, they do not want to show their own trauma, their own distress.
So then it seems like maybe suicide is really on the rise for these first responders and the law enforcement? Is that what you're seeing?
So there's two facets to that. One is actual suicides, and the other is contemplated suicides. Contemplated suicides could be a drawn-out process of weeks, months, or even years, but it's always there, ruminating in the mind. So what we did is to augment what the counties and the police departments are able to do on their own, because they're limited in their budgets as well, is we brought in a very respected, renowned program, an NGO, non-governmental organization, that does psych services, using that phrase, for veterans that had, you might call it, post-traumatic stress disorder. They and we do not believe in a stress disorder. We believe in post-traumatic growth. Take a negative, take a bad circumstance, turn it into a positive. How do you do that? Well, this program, Struggle Well program, is the answer to that. So we originally started 5 years ago by going to, back then, Chief Colina, City of Miami, Chief of Police, and I said, I need 40 minutes of your time. Well, sure, Al. And I went in there with Josh Goldberg, and we explained to him what Struggle Well actually means, how we want to bring it to his department. And it'll cost nothing for the department. We, along with the service, Struggle Well Services, will cover it. He agreed on it, and as a member of Miami-Dade Chiefs Association, as an associate member, I started speaking with them, and now we have 3,700 officers who have been through our program. But understand, it's not 2 hours on the couch. I'm going to a chief. I'm saying to them originally, we need you to give us 2 officers per class, and you can't have them for the period of the class. Doesn't sound like a big deal until I tell you it's a 5-day, 40-hour program. So it's very cathartic. You start on Monday, by Wednesday, you're already into it. By Thursday, it's all coming out, and it's a phenomenal program.
Tell me about other initiatives that the CPR Foundation does.
So one of the other aspects of this, remember I said 2:30 in the morning, that trauma officer just went. We now, last year, started a peer-to-peer program. That is certified law enforcement officers and chaplains. We certified them to be a first responder in the sense. That officer can now, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, can pick up a phone and have a peer be at their side within an hour to 90 minutes. And we've had over 200 calls in our first 10 months, and it's going brilliantly. We have another program we're coming out with right now, actually. It'll be live in June. That is a leadership program. If you're a patrol officer and now you become a sergeant, or are a sergeant becoming a lieutenant, where's the leadership programs? Because departments can only go do so much. We have a number of PhDs in leadership programs and master degree level officers, people who walk the walk with them. And this leadership program is beginning. As a matter of fact, Miami-Dade College just adapted it.
Kudos to you.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And talk to me also now. One of the other things that you're very involved in is human trafficking, forced labor. Talk a little bit about that and some of the statistics that our audience, and for me, it was mind-blowing, some of the things that I learned, because it's not just south of the border or on the border. It's here in our community, our big city, our beautiful city of Miami, where we have such luxurious events and Formula One, and we have Art Basel, and next year we're going to have FIFA, the soccer coming, and we had the Super Bowls happening. Talk about that. What happens?
You just hit the nail on the head.
Well, we can go home now. But it's nothing to laugh about, but talk about that.
So yes, everyone does reflect on when they hear human trafficking, which isn't all that often that they hear about it. They think of the border, which is certainly so. The females and the children coming across that border are molested. There's no doubt about it. But what about this little town in Iowa or Utah or any other place you want? I don't want to mention names, but any place you want to mention, What about the grooming that's going on? What is grooming? Well, in the Bronx, we have a program that we support. It's called Not on My Watch, and they are dedicated former trafficked women that are dedicated to protecting the younger girls. And that a groomer is somebody that sits outside their home or on a stoop and watches the same kids getting off the school bus every day, and as a result of that, tries to manipulate that. Come on in, you want some ice cream or whatever it may be. That's one form of grooming.
So they're lured into the experience.
Well said.
What's going on with these families? What's going on with these children? Why is it happening, and where is it happening? Let's bring it to Miami. What's happening in our affluent areas?
Okay, so in Miami, it is a little bit different. One of the aspects of Miami is you just hit the nail on the head. You had Formula One, you had the Super Bowl, you have all these great events, and everyone wants to come in here. Well, what you don't see is prior to the events coming in, trafficked women are brought into the state, the city, the locality, days before the event to get ready. And many of them are manipulated because they have family that's going to be threatened or are being threatened if they don't cooperate.
Who are they being threatened by?
So, we don't want to stereotype the trafficker, because we don't want to think of a stereotype of a drug dealer or someone like, it's the guy on your left and right. When I go to a movie theater, I always look around and I look for the attendees. But statistically, there's people in that movie theater, 100 people, there's at least 1 or 2 people trafficking there. So, you have somebody that, I'll give you an example. We have numbers of trafficked people that are mature now that tell us their stories. One story is at 12 years old, she met a boy, and that was 16, turning 16. She thought she was in love with him. And after a while, she became promiscuous with him. Well, after another while, he had her manipulated in the sense that, I'm your savior. I'm the one you love.
I can't live without you.
You can't live without me.
Yeah,
you can't live without me.
Well, I can't live without you anyway. But that this young woman could not function without this man overpowering her emotionally.
Well, he was very supportive of her, and anything she had to say about her parents, he was right there to belittle them as well. And she became dependent on him. She became dependent on him for her emotional support. But by the age of 13, they were further promiscuous, and now he would say, "This is my friend. I need you to have promiscuous with him too."
Is this drug money? Is this what's going on? Where is this funded? What? Because it's billions of dollars industry.
This particular individual started very, very small. He had one friend come in, and he paid $50 for promiscuity. She didn't understand what she was doing, but this went on and on and on. And over the years, it got more expensive and more frequent. And when she started therapy at 16, she still didn't understand, wouldn't allow herself to understand. But yeah, what's happening now at the border is the border's been sealed, basically. And coke and all the other wonderful drugs out there has been reduced greatly. So if you're a trafficker, you're going to make up that. If you're a drug dealer, you're going to make up that money some way. And trafficking is an easy way, because a woman doesn't expire that fast. You buy a gram or kilo of coke, you sell it, you have to replace it now. They say that a woman can last 7 years. 20.
That one person.
That one person.
And there's an isolation that goes on. There is younger, talk about the ages of these poor, and more women than men are trafficked.
It's 97% will be women than men. And
is it they stop having relationships with family, with friends? How what are the signs?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head again. Yes, it's separation. It's separation, and you see a depression, a paranoia. You are all of a sudden the girl is no longer associating with her family and friends the way she used to, or if she goes to school, she comes back. much later than she should. She's dressing differently, perhaps a little bit more sexy. But the separation is remarkable how they do it. And as you said earlier, 40% of children on the internet are approached by traffickers. See, once you post your shot of vacationing in Florida on the beach and in your swimwear, once you post that, they find it because it's an open website, because you're posting it as an open website. Now, if you think no one's seeing this but your friends, well, your friends are forwarding that to other people perhaps. But they are very, very sophisticated in getting into the minds of children. Now, when I say children, I do mean children, as young as you want to think. But certainly 8 years old to 12 years old is a prime age for them. And certainly 12 to 16 and 16 to 9, different people go after different things. But you have to understand, don't think of the stereotypical trafficker, because these are uncles.
Okay, so why don't you talk to me about the untypical, or what is really going on, what the myth is and what the reality is?
So I can tell you personally, I've met young ladies that had been, every time they had a family gathering, there was an uncle that was molesting a 13-year-old. And she did not want to, he told her, you don't want to tell mom and dad, you don't want to get anyone in trouble, because if you get them in trouble, if you tell them, I'm going to have to hurt them. And so this particular girl, till she was 18, was going along with it. It's the neighbors. It's, I don't want to start scaring people by saying latchkey kids and all that, but it's neighbors, it's friends, boyfriends.
But it's, I don't want to scare, but I think the information is important. So is it the latchkey kids? Is it the ones that are feeling a little bit alienated from their families? Is it who is the typical, if there is a typical? You're talking about an online where they grab you in and they try to get your confidences and your, who is it? Let's know about that.
So you can go on digital trafficking websites, on YouTube. Digital trafficking. We have a tremendous amount of people, single mothers who have boyfriends, and the boyfriends are starting to molest the daughters. We have family relatives all the time.
Is that considered trafficking, or is that considered?
It's trafficking once they extort, number one, and number two, if they bring in any kind of extortion or any second person, or so forth and so on, it's trafficking. So don't only think about the girl who's chained to a radiator and or doing 20 tricks per day. It's the average, the 12-year-old I spoke about, who is at 16, her parents were law enforcement.
What?
If you can imagine that.
What?
That's how successful they are in alienating people and manipulating the mind of children. So if your daughter, in particular your daughter, your son as well, are on the internet, you must know what they're doing on that internet.
So how do we know that? How do we safeguard that? How do we talk to our young people that are on the internet, or should they be on the internet? I mean, you can't have you just can't have a firewall on it, but what can we do as parents?
The best thing we can do is parent, which means listen to your children. Don't yell at them when they tell you things you don't like to hear, because they're communicating with you. Build a relationship with your children that they want to speak to you. You create a comfortable environment for them. When they go on the internet, you talk to them about what the dangers of the internet are. And when they're on their phone sitting there for extended periods of time, you have to have some discipline in there. 3 hours on a phone or constantly, or at dinner tables, should not be. Start parenting the old-fashioned way. Get involved in your children's life. At school, know their friends. Know where they go when they're going with their friends. I'm not a guy who believes in sleepovers, because there's a lot that goes on in some homes on sleepovers. Now, I have grandchildren. My grandchildren do sleepovers. But I assure you that the mother or father or both know everything about that family. And I assure you, you must watch your child's demeanor, How do they, has their demeanor changed? Has their clothing changed? Has their attitude about anything else changed? Do you see them speaking about new people in their lives and they can't explain who these people are? What age are they? How they come into your life? You need to be participating with your children.
What does the CPR Foundation do when it comes to trafficking? We've spoken off camera plenty of times, and you tell me the work, but tell our audience how CPR Foundation handles the human trafficking aspect of what you do.
So we're in let's face it, Miami is an affluent area for a great many people. And my friends and people I come across are very affluent individuals. And I have found that the more affluent you are, the less you know about human trafficking and child exploitation or sexploitation or employment exploitation. And that is because you're involved in living your life. Many of our members, we're membership based. We don't have money coming in from the government. It's all on word of mouth and membership. Many of our people are so overly engaged in business that they don't have time really to understand. They don't watch television, and they don't read the newspapers that one might think they should be reading. But it's up. So what we do is we do things such as bourbon and cigars, we call it. We have bourbon and cigars, and we invite 80, 90 people to it. And we have a guest speaker. And our guest speaker, a couple times, was Sheriff Rosie Cordero Stutz. It doesn't get better than Sheriff Rosie. And this is a woman who engaged as a patrol officer, made arrests, went into homicide, went into internal affairs, went throughout the whole gambit of policing, and now has risen to the level of sheriff. But so what we do, we bring people out, we talk about subject matter they don't typically hear. But I will say this, and I am partial, and you'll have to excuse me. Our biggest culprit in all of this is media. Media refuses to cover human trafficking with any kind of significance, a spot here and a spot there. And the newspapers don't either. And one of the reasons for that is, they don't want to tarnish the reputation of a city or town or a municipality, perhaps. But the media is our best tool. If media would engage with law enforcement on constantly speaking like we're speaking, on stories, tell us about human trafficking. What are your plights? Many of the departments only have 3 detectives handling human trafficking. Now that's an impossible number, but the budgets don't allow for the proper numbers. So this is truly a societal issue, and that's why we're involved in it. It's up to us as individuals, as a society, to determine what kind of society we want, not only necessarily for us, but our children, our grandchildren, our nieces, nephews, our friends, our neighbors. And we can empower ourselves to be a greater force for good than evil is. And we can't look to the law enforcement because they don't have the budgets and the manpower. But if we all are cognizant of human trafficking, looking at children's faces at an airport, looking at a movie theater, anywhere we go, look at the children, look at the faces, because they're a dead giveaway in a lot of ways. Now, I don't want anyone interjecting themselves in between this, but there's law enforcement officers all over the place. And the best thing that's ever happened to Miami-Dade County, besides Sheriff Rosie, is State Attorney Kathleen Rundle.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about her role in helping the local law enforcement agencies, because I know there's a website. It's MiamiSAO.com, and Kathy Rundle's office, who is the Miami-Dade State Attorney's office. Talk about her.
Her number is 305 FIX STOP, 305 FIX STOP. That's a hotline. She has brought together from every department in Miami-Dade County various detectives to work on her squad. And they are the most effective that I've seen in the country, quite frankly. They take it seriously. They go out any hour, day and night. They're there. They go to rescue women and children. And it's a daily occurrence. This is not once a month. So State Attorney Rundle will prosecute. We'll do the best job to be able to prosecute. But it's up to us as citizens to report what we think, what we've seen. We don't have to be right 100% of the time. We just need to do our duty, which is, hey, I didn't like the way this child was interacting with this individual. So I'm going to call 305 Fix Stop, and I'm going to make a statement. We don't want anyone going into harm's way by videoing or getting involved. But nevertheless, there might be a time where that does happen.
And like your wife said, if you're really, either you can scream at the TV, no one cares, be quiet, or do something about it.
Exactly.
So if our community wants to get involved with the CPR Foundation, how can they?
Well, you can always give me a phone call at 516-661-1000. But I encourage you first to go on our website to see if it fits you. And that website is www.cprfcharity.org, cprfcharity.org. And there's a plethora of information for you there. We encourage people to get involved. You want to just sit on a TV at home yelling at your TV? Step up, get involved. Do a food drive with us. What does that mean? We'll get the food. You're handing it out. And everything we do is through the blue uniform. Thanksgiving, we gave out 3,000 turkeys. I didn't give out one. Uniformed officers did. During COVID, we knocked on doors, we being the police, and handing out $50 grocery cards. Everybody can get involved. We have a simple way for that.
And it's a community coming together. And I just have to ask you, in the 30 seconds that we have left, we have beautiful
challenge coins.
Challenge coins. Tell me what a challenge coin is.
So law enforcement and military and firefighters, first responders, we have walls of racks of these in our office. We collect these. This is just my members will carry these in their pockets. They'll see a law enforcement officer. They'll go, "Good afternoon, officer. I'd like to give you a Community Police Relations Foundation challenge coin to say hello and thank you." And we have racks of these. We collect them as well. We don't sell them. No one will sell them.
But I think this is beautiful that people can get involved. We can have a community that is stronger, that is safer, and it's up to us. What you see and is that you use your mouth, use your ears, use your eyes to recognize that there is someone possibly in danger, that you can help someone's life, that you can save a child. You can also get involved with some of the work that you do on a daily basis with the events and the sponsoring of the holiday and bringing goodwill and mental health issues, which are just astronomical, and the work that you do. Thank you so much, Al.
I want you to hear one other thing. We do things like golf instead of guns and boxing instead of fighting. Imagine that. But we're here to help.
Sign me up.
Join us.
Thank you, Al. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining me today. I'm Fara Sax. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Have a wonderful